Welcome back, everyone. Tonight we're going deep. World War II, a single bombing mission over Germany on April 26, 1944, to be exact.
Over 200 Lancasters in the air that night.
Yeah, we've got some pretty incredible sources on this one. Following Flight Officer Fred, they called him Mifflin, and his Lancaster crew.
The Lancaster, workhorse of the RAF Bomber Command.
Yeah.
A 4-engine heavy bomber,
I mean, the payload those things could carry. It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. But operating them, especially at night, incredibly dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Hundreds of these massive bombers, 7-man crew in each one, flying into enemy territory. German radar was, well, it was getting pretty sophisticated by that point in the war. And the night fighters, I mean.
Yeah, they were on the prowl.
Must have been terrifying. Just utterly terrifying.
Oh, and the Germans? They were developing new tactics constantly, always trying to counter the growing effectiveness of the Allied bomber offensive, one of those innovations. Schrag music.
Okay, Schrag music. I've heard that term, but honestly, it sounds more like a type of music than a military tactic.
Right.
What was it?
It translates to slanting music, but you're right, nothing musical about it. Basically, the Germans started equipping their Bf-110 night fighters with upward-firing cannons.
So instead of, attacking head-on or from behind, these fighters would come in low, under the bomber.
Underneath.
And fire upward.
Exactly.
Wow.
A blind spot in the Lancaster's defenses caught them completely off guard.
Chilling. And our sources say Mifflin and his crew, they actually saw it happen. Another Lancaster got hit by Schrag music early on in their mission. I can't even imagine what that must have been like for them, just seeing a fellow bomber just vanish from the sky.
Demoralizing, I'd imagine. A stark reminder of the ever-present threat.
Absolutely.
The sources do describe Mifflin as a pretty calm and reassuring presence, though. Must have been crucial for crew morale, especially in a situation like that. High pressure.
Absolutely. But even with a steady leader, danger was everywhere. Approaching their target, they ran into a barrage of flak.
To really understand that,
Yeah.
you got to imagine flying through a storm of steel. Literal storm of steel. Every flak explosion, even a near miss, could send shrapnel, tearing through the aircraft, right?
Yeah.
Or cripple a vital system.
And in Mifflin's case, it did more than just rattle the crew. They were hit. One of the engines caught fire.
Engine fires, one of the most feared events in air combat. They could spread so quickly,
Right.
lead to an explosion, cause catastrophic damage.
And that's when one of Mifflin's crew members, Norman Jackson, the flight engineer, he decided to put the fire out himself from outside the aircraft.
What? We often think of courage as this grand, almost superhuman quality. But in Jackson's case, it was a combination of, desperation, ingenuity, and just pure determination. Drove him to do something, almost unimaginable.
I've read the account, and it still seems unbelievable. He squeezed through the escape hatch, fought against the wind at 180 miles per hour, and the aircraft is still under attack. He managed to wedge himself onto the wing with an axe. And somehow, the freezing temperatures, the force of the wind, he put the fire out.
Speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, doesn't it? This man facing almost certain death. But instead of giving in, he fights back, does whatever it takes to save himself, his crew. Incredible. Testament to the kind of courage these airmen had.
An act of bravery that earned him the Victoria Cross, highest military decoration for valor in the face of the enemy. But it came at a terrible price, our sources reveal.
Because as Jackson's clinging to that wing for dear life, the German fighter pilot, he circled around, saw the flames die down, and came back for another attack.
And tragically, Jackson was hit. Gunfire. Just as the fuel tank exploded, the sources described the scene as just chaos. Jackson dangling from his parachute, the crew trying desperately to hold on to him as he slips away.
The helplessness they must have felt. Here they were, having just witnessed this incredible act of heroism, and now they're confronted with losing him. And in the midst of all of this, Mifflin, the pilot, he had to make an impossible choice.
Right. The Lancaster was badly damaged, and they were losing altitude fast. The rest of the crew had to bail out, knowing the bomber was going down. But Mifflin refused to leave his post.
He chose to stay with the tail gunner, Norman Johnson. He had been fatally wounded during the attack, even facing his own death. Mifflin felt this responsibility, to stay with his fallen comrade. It's a testament to the bonds, the powerful bonds of brotherhood, forged in war.
It makes you think about how we define courage. Jackson's act of physical bravery, awe-inspiring. But there's a different kind of courage in Mifflin's decision. Quiet, selfless, loyalty, Compassion.
Absolutely. The complexity of human nature, even in the most extreme circumstances. And as Jackson drifted towards the Earth, parachute on fire from the fuel tank explosion, odds of survival slim to none.
A fall from 18,000 feet. You mentioned survival rates earlier, but I mean, how improbable is that?
The human body. It's not designed to withstand that kind of impact. And yet, miraculously, he survived.
I mean, it's hard to imagine. Horrific injuries, but he landed somehow, crawled to safety, evaded capture for 3 days before being taken as a prisoner of war.
And even after surviving that fall, it wasn't over for him, right? Captivity, the injuries, the scars, both physical and mental, I mean.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty.
Yeah, it's almost too much to comprehend, but he persevered. He recovered eventually, returned home to England, got to meet his son, who had been born while he was a prisoner.
Wow.
And then there's the Victoria Cross, awarded for his incredible bravery that night.
A testament to his strength, both physical and mental. But it's his reaction to receiving the Victoria Cross that gets me. He said, "What the bloody hell for?"
Really?
Yeah. It speaks to, I don't know, a certain humility. Like he was just doing his duty. Anyone would have done the same.
That's fascinating to me, that understated response. It makes you think about how we perceive heroes, acts of courage. This man who faced unimaginable danger showed extraordinary bravery, and yet he didn't see himself as anything special.
It challenges our preconceived notions, doesn't it? Reminds us that courage isn't always about, seeking glory or recognition. Sometimes it's about quiet acts of selflessness, doing what needs to be done, even when it seems impossible.
And it makes the sacrifice of those who didn't make it back, like Mifflin and Johnson, all the more poignant. Their story, intertwined with Jackson's, paints a picture. The human cost of war, the bravery, the loss, the enduring impact.
So much to consider. What does it really mean to be courageous? How do we honor the sacrifices of those who came before us? How do we carry their legacy forward? Not just in remembrance, but in how we live our own lives.
It's a lot to take in, but that's the power of these deep dives. We explore these incredible stories, we grapple with complex questions, and hopefully we come away with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Connecting with history on a personal level, I think. Finding meaning in the past.
Yeah.
Carrying those insights forward into the present.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary story of Norman Jackson and the Lancaster crew. We've got some fantastic resources if you want to learn more in the show notes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking out those remarkable stories that remind us of the strength and resilience of the human spirit.